The extraordinary.
Ordinary.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we've just had notification we've started live streaming, so it's been broadcast on YouTube now, so we need to start the meeting, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Lynn. Yeah, it is 2 o'clock, so let's move on. Thanks everyone. Thanks for turning up. This is the Standards Audit and Performance Committee for 24th of September for the Shropshire and Weaken Fire Authority. Before the consideration of business, I'm going to read this out, everyone. So just bear with me. It's about 5 paragraphs. I'm obliged to inform you that the non-exempt part of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public can see and hear the meeting as it is happening. Members are reminded to mute their microphone unless asked to speak. This helps prevent any background noise from interfering with the meeting. Members are asked to refrain from speaking across each other. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please indicate by chat or hard hand function on Teams. Officers will be invited individually to deliver their papers. At the end of each papers, the chair will refer to the chat function to address any comments or questions. When discussions on a paper are completed, the chair will be asked for a proper and seconder. The members are asked to propose and second by chat function. Once the recommendation have been proposed and seconded, votes will be taken on an exception cases. This is the chair will ask if there is any members who are against the proposed recommendation or who wish to abstain. They will be noted by the executive officer and the chair will then confirm the result of the vote. The chair will then move to the next paper and invite the next officer to speak. So, welcome to the following: Richard Percival and David Rowley from the External Audit, who will present the report on item 7 on the agenda. So that's a bit further down yet for you gents. Peter Chatterton and Mrs. Carol Muir and the Audit Service Shropshire. They're there as well. Are we all here?
Hello, Claudia.
All these people are here from the Audit Shropshire?
Yes.
That's fine then. Right. Apologies, Lynn.
Chair, the only member that isn't here is Councillor Minery. I think he may still be on Shropshire Council business at the moment, so I'll record his apologies if he doesn't attend. Other than that, everybody else is here.
All right. In that case, yeah, he'll probably struggling with the technology somewhere and trying to get in. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Please read out the following. Members are reminded that they must not participate in the discussion of or voting on any matter in which they may have a disclosable pecuniary interest and should leave the room prior to the comments of the debate. So, councillors, I think that's quite clear. What that means, I don't think anybody would have any. If so, please. No? Public questions. Any public questions? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, mine might be the Pensions Board chairman. I won't be voting. I'll abstain. Having receiving a widow's pension.
Okay. Pension one, yeah. That's.
Thank you, Councillor D.
Okay. Thank you for that, Pauline. Public question, any, Lynn?
No public questions, Chair.
Okay, in that case, we move on.
Chair, before we commence,
can
I thank the officers for the dealing with the fires at Red Hill in Telford and also One Stop in Trench for all their hard work. So if I can get it recorded, that thanking them for their support with those fires and thanking them.
Okay, thanks very much for that, John. Yes, we did have that big fire in Red Hill, didn't we? Last week.
We did.
And it was well taken care of. So well done to all the officers and all those who were there. Thanks, John. Right. the minutes after meeting standards of audit for 16th of July. Right. I read them earlier on today. They all seem to be the stuff we discussed. Does anybody has any comments or disagrees with those minutes? Councillors?
I propose we accept them.
We accept them, yeah. Seconder?
I'll second them, Chair.
Thanks, John. Okay. Thanks very much for that. So it is seconded, and I assume we all agree with that if you don't say anything. So that's taken care of item 4. Item 5. Item 5. Wait, let me get my papers in order now. Joanne, statement of accounts.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the statement of accounts for financial year 2019-20. For this year only, due to the pandemic, the statement of accounts must be approved by those charged with governance by the 30th of November 2020. The statement has been audited by Grant Thornton, and their findings are presented to you later on the agenda.
Yeah.
An awareness session has been held prior to this meeting to go through the main parts of the information within the statement, and the appendix to the report also contains further information on the movements within the financial statement. The general fund balance, which is contained within the statement, has been reviewed by the authority in June, and its uses has been approved. So the committee is asked to consider and approve the statement of accounts for 1920. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay. Joanne, what was that? They were supposed to be done last May, but they're a bit late, are they?
Yes, the account should have been...
Explain to the councillors, what's that all about?
The draft statement should have been done by the end of May and approved by the end of July, but due to the delays with the pandemic, the statements were signed off in June, the draft statements, and they need to be approved by the end of November. So we're still within the approval period.
Okay, so it has to be done by November, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because there was legislation to say, you know, you can put it in late rather than May.
There was. Yes, there was, Chair.
Is it just for this year, or is it for applies next year as well?
It's just for this year, Chair.
Is it this year now? Okay, that's fine. Right, so this is a recommendation and so on. Question, queries from councillors? Okay. So this is the just account statement, and then we move on to the actual accounts on it. Do you need a seconder and proposer for that as well, the account statement, Lynn?
Yes, Chair, if there's no questions or anything, then if we could have a proposer and a seconder.
Okay, there then. Right, can I have a proposer for the statement of accounts and a seconder, please?
I'll propose those.
Thanks, John. Okay, Paul, second. All agree? Yes, we all agree. Right, we move on to item number 6. Now, this is the annual governance statement, and it's going to be presented by Ged Edwards. Do we have him here?
I'm here, Chair.
That's it. You're all in there. Thanks very much, Mr. Edwards. All yours. Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the annual governance statement accompanies the final accounts and is part of our systems of internal controls. It also identifies areas of improvement which form part of the improvement plan, which sits in the appendix. The AGS also contains details of audits completed by internal audit last year and proposed audits for the coming year. And then the appendix sets out progress against the 6 areas of improvement. As with the accounts, this would normally come to the previous audit committee but obviously because of COVID, it's coming to this this committee. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, councillors, anybody wants any question, clarification on this annual governance account? Okay. Have I got a hand up? I can't see it. Chris. Oh no, he's just trying to get in. He's like Chris Mullin trying to get in, Liv.
Yes, I've just let him in, Chair. He's coming as an observer. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I got no questions or queries for annual governance. Do we all agree?
Yeah.
Moved, seconded. Thank you, John. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Gad.
Thank you, Chair.
Now then, we move on to the external audit for findings. And we have Richard, David, who's going to do it?
Hello, Chair. It's Richard Percival here. So I'm the external audit engagement lead. I'm just going to put the audit into a quick bit of context, and then Dave will pick up and talk you through the report. So we're on page 28 of the agenda pack, the audit findings report for the authority. I think it goes without saying that it's been a challenging year and continues to be a very challenging year for everyone. It's been challenging for the Fire and Rescue Authority. It's been particularly challenging for the finance team in terms of getting the accounts delivered, despite the extension in the timeline that you've already talked about. And it's been challenging for my team in terms of delivering the audit. I mean, in delivering an audit, we're dependent on the information we're given in terms of the timely delivery of the accounts, the supporting working papers, and the communication and the willingness of the finance team to communicate with us. And I just wanted to, record my thanks through this committee to the excellent sort of support we've had throughout the audit from the finance team. We couldn't have done it without the finance team. That's always the case, but particularly this year. So we'd just like to record our thanks to Joanne and the team. So a big thank you for that. There's one other issue I just want to draw members' attention to before I hand over to Dave, and that is the audit's substantially complete. One of the outstanding items, and Dave will mention this, is the Shropshire Pension Fund audit. So as part of the process, we need to get assurance from the Shropshire Pension Fund auditor. And once that assurance is provided, we will consider that assurance and determine whether we have to do any more audit testing. Now, I'm actually the Shropshire Pension Fund auditor as well, so that audit is very well progressed, and I'm anticipating the week commencing the 5th of October being able to release the report, so that gives you a bit of a timeline for when I will be able to issue my audit opinion. Because this is likely to be my first audit opinion of this season, of this local government and fire and rescue season, it will be subject, or is likely to be subject, to a peer review. So there will be a process, because we're very keen as a firm, given the unusual circumstances we find ourselves and some of the issues that we refer to in our audit opinion, that we take a consistent approach across the piece. So that just puts the audit into context, and unless any members have any questions, Chair, at that point, I'll hand over to Dave.
So what you're saying, Richard, if you're on your third audit for us, you have to have it checked by your peer or somebody. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just and particularly, as Dave will explain, most of our audit opinions this year will be non-standard in as much as they'll refer to the valuation uncertainty due to the COVID pandemic in land and buildings valuations. And as a firm, we want to make sure that we're taking a consistent approach in reporting that matter. So it's not really a challenge as such to say, but it's just a bit of a safety check to make sure that we're all consistent.
Understand. David, you're going to take over?
Well, will do. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Chair. So if I can just begin just by seconding Richard's comments really earlier on, just to express our thanks for the team. It has been a difficult year, as Richard said, but the team typically has always given us good working papers and good cooperation, and that's been no different this year, which was a really big help in what's difficult, been a really difficult time for everybody. I think Richard has already quite adequately given you kind of an exec summary. So I'll jump into some of the detail, if I may. So if we can jump to page 32 of the paper pack, what I'll just draw your attention to on here at the foot of the slide is a table which outlines
Dave,
materiality.
Can I just stop you for a minute? Lynn, we have, Joanne, we have these papers, audit finding Shropshire. We don't have a item 7. It starts with a 1 and then it goes up to 21. Are we talking about the same paper?
Sorry, Chair, can I just explain? Some of the officers have their papers electronically, so they have a large pack of papers. So there's a slight difference in page numbering. So, David, you may need to refer to the actual page number of the report. I do apologise.
No problem. Thank you. Then I'll do it. So for those of you with the hard copy, this is page 5 of the report. So there are page numbers in the bottom right, where it's page 32 in the PDF papers pack. So I'll just give everybody a moment. Everybody comfortable with where we are?
Audit approach.
Audit approach, yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. So the key thing to draw out here really is just materiality. So those of you that have been on these committees in the past, be aware materiality is a key concept for us as external auditors. It's basically how we define the financial value of a disclosure which we would deem to be significantly important, that were it to be wrong or omitted, it would impact the user's understanding of the accounts and we would require it to be amended. So just to flag up that's what we're talking about when we refer to materiality. The headline there is the headline materiality, £470,000, and that's basically based on a benchmark of the authority's gross expenditure. So it's around about 2% of the authority's gross expenditure for the year. There's also a couple of other points there. Materiality for specific transactions, we've set at 50k. So we deem, in this instance, senior officer remuneration to be sufficiently of interest to users of the accounts to have its own level of materiality. So those are the benchmarks that we're working to. On to page 6, so page 33 of the PDF pack and page 6 of the hard copy is where we begin our detailed outline of the work that we've done against the significant audit risks, which we outlined in our plan to you just before Easter. And we give some commentary on the work that we've done and our findings. As you'll recall from when we presented the plan in April, we designated a specific financial statements level risk in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time, there's a lot of concern around the possibility of staff sickness, governance arrangements issues, and the ability of organisations to deliver accounts, as well as obviously our own ability to deliver the audit. I think in practice, we've been pleased to say that actually it's run very smoothly, although we've all obviously been required to work remotely, which has had its own challenges. The kind of levels of staff sickness that were feared haven't arisen. So in terms of the sort of admin side of things, we have been able to work well with the authorities team, but also there are some other considerations there around looking at going concern, the financial robustness of the entity in the light of economic uncertainty, which we've also done some work on. We'll touch on that a lot when we talk about going concern, but fundamentally in the light of our audit procedures that we've done to reflect the risk of COVID-19, we're satisfied that there's no issues that we want to report to you in that respect. Then we go on to page 7 of the hard copy and page 34 of the PDF pack, which is where you get what we refer to as the assumed risks. So under the auditing standard 240, we are bound as external auditors to assume that 2 risks in particular exist in any set of financial statements. The top one is the risk that there are fraudulent revenue transactions within the revenue cycle. In the local authority context, this is a little bit different. This is something that perhaps might be more relevant to a company that, for example, had performance-related pay or reported to a stock exchange. In practice, the majority of funding for an organisation such as a fire authority comes from funding sources such as local taxation, government grants, and there's less performance-related pay. As a result, audit teams in the public sector are typically able to rebut that risk due to the controls in place at councils, and also the incentives, as we talked about, the lack of incentive to manipulate revenue recognition. And in this instance, as we have done in the past, we've been able to rebut that risk for the fire authority, and we didn't find anything following on from our planning period during our final accounts procedures which led us to believe that that rebuttal was incorrect. The second one of the assumed risks, which you'll see in any audit report, and we'll always report to you on an annual basis, is management override of controls. So what we're talking about here is the risk that management could use override controls within the accounting system to manipulate or show a false financial position. Typically, what we look at here, as is outlined in the right-hand column, is what we call journal entries. So these are manual entries to the general ledger, typically used to reflect estimates or to bring entries in from sub-ledgers which don't have an interface to the main general ledger. So we would typically look at the control environment there. We look at things like authorization of transactions, review of transactions, and we'll also pick a sample of those and test them to supporting documentation. And again, pleased to say in this instance, we've not highlighted anything that we want to bring to your attention in respect of override of controls. Moving on then to the page 35, which is page 8 in the hard copy. This is where we set out what I would say the more entity specific risks. So this is where we've looked at Shropshire Fire or Shropshire and Wrekin Fire specifically as an organisation and pulled out what we think are the key risks. Similarly, we would have reported these to you in the plan, but I'll just go over these again. Probably no surprise to members that have been involved in this process in the past and have seen other local authority audits that what we've deemed to be the key risks here in relation to the largest estimates in the financial statements, which relate to valuation of land and buildings, which we talk about on page 8, and the valuation of net defined benefit pension liabilities, which we talk about on page 9, and that's 35 and 36 in the PDF pack. We just talk about valuation of land and buildings first of all. So the authority has a very significant, very material portfolio of properties of land and buildings, predominantly in relation to its various fire stations and operational bases across the county of Shropshire. The authority revalues these on an annual basis, so engage a valuer to come and perform a hard valuation of those on an annual basis as at 31st of March each year. And our role is obviously to test some of the inputs to that, and we'll also have a look at the methods and assumptions that have been employed by the valuer and make an overall assessment of the competence of the valuer to perform that work. There's two things that I'll draw to your attention here. First of all, we did pick up, you'll see at the foot of that tab, we did pick up an audit adjustment, something that we agreed with the finance team that they would adjust. Just want to put a bit of context on this really. What this is we, as referred to, we look at some of the inputs into the valuer's work. One of the key ones that we'll look at is gross internal area. So we'll typically obtain floor plans for a sample of properties and have a look at the size, and the way that the valuer tends to form an estimate of the value will be fundamentally floor area or gross internal area of different types of building times by a rate, that the regionalised rate that he assesses that each area of land is worth. We did come up with a discrepancy between the floor area per the authority and per the supporting documentation. That was adjusted, and that led to an increase of just under 400,000 in the value of land and buildings in the authority's balance sheet, and an increase in the revaluation reserve held against that asset. I think, again, just really important to flag up, this is not an investment property or something that would have a real impact on the financial performance of the authority. So this is really principally just to aid the kind of understanding of users of the accounts, but without sort of going into too much very technical detail on the accounting associated with it. The movements in valuation on this kind of property tend to be typically absorbed by reserves on the other side of the balance sheet. So this isn't something that will impact the performance of the authority, but we did feel that the adjustment does give a truer picture of the value. The second point that we wanted to draw out here is in relation to, I think, something that Richard touched on earlier on, which is around material uncertainty in relation to valuations. So the backdrop to this is in response to the pandemic back in March earlier this year. RICS gave an practice alert to its practitioners to flag up that they should be thinking about including what they refer to as a material uncertainty clause in any of their reports. That wasn't a mandated requirement, but it is something that we've seen in a lot of reports across local authorities, fire authorities, but also in other areas of the public sector and beyond. And it's essentially just to flag up that although the valuation may well be based on appropriate methodology and the best available information, given the wider element of economic uncertainty, it's important to draw a user of the account's attention to the fact that it's a particularly difficult estimate to put into place in the current climate. So we will also reflect that material uncertainty from the authority's valuer and that's disclosed in the authority's financial statements in our audit opinion via something called an emphasis of matter paragraph, which slightly unusual, not something that we would typically put in for authorities' statement of accounts. For audit opinion. What the purpose of that is essentially it's not a qualification of the accounts. It's not a problem per se. It's just something where we feel there's a particularly important disclosure that we really need to flag up and draw a user of the account's attention to. So that's what we mean by emphasis of matter.
Dave, what you're really saying is this material uncertainty on the values of PPA. It might not be the same next year after we have used them all. This is in a layman's term, isn't it? You know, you buy something at the top price because there's a demand for it now, but it will not hold the price next year or the year after because we won't be using it. Is that what you're hinting at?
In a manner of speaking, I mean, I think what we're getting at in this context, this is really specifically down to the impact on markets as in March as a result of the uncertainty stemming from the pandemic. So I think there was a feeling at that time of year that there was a lot of instability out there. There's not many transactions happening in property markets. Things weren't being sold, so very hard to sort of do, price discovery. Everything was on hold, so there was a feeling that it was possible, although the nature of arriving at that number was correct. There was very little way for people to understand whether or not that price would be correct. There was a lot of concern around kind of economic fallout from the pandemic and the possibility that property values might fall quite significantly. So I think that's what it's getting at. It's saying, this is a really significant estimate. It's a very complex and difficult estimate. And in the context of this year, it's just really important to flag up to users of the accounts that, there was a very good possibility at that time that there could be a further change to that, or there might be a wider range of possibilities. I think, as we've all probably seen, things have slightly stabilised on an ongoing basis. And certainly in some, when we're looking at kind of quarterly valuation reports going forward, some valuers are now removing those material uncertainty clauses. So but as you'll be aware, financial statements are very much a snapshot at a point in time. So that's the purpose there, is just to say this is reflecting the value as at 31st of March. And at that point, there was significant uncertainty in the market. Hopefully that
Chair, if I might, sorry, yeah. I apologise, David. I say this every year. I think it's just to remind the members that this is no criticism of auditors in any way or the audit process, but this element of it is largely academic until we decide that we can sell a fire station. So, as David said at the beginning, these are fixed assets. We don't trade them. They have no real value to us. I think it's important to recognise the cost of rebuild, which is what what this is part of it. So there's a risk to the organisation in terms of cost of rebuild, but of course that's all insured. So really, you've got to be accurate. I think the most important thing we're learning from it is to make sure our valuers use the same valuation technique each year, because if they don't, it just confuses things. So we are learning. It's really useful for David to have raised that. Thank you.
Pauline?
Yeah, you said about property values going down. I just wonder whether in the rural areas the property prices are likely to go up, because there seems to be so many people moving from the south, moving from cities into the rural areas to get away from whatever they perceive as happening. I just wondered if the land values are going to start to rise, as will property prices.
I think that's probably a question for the valuer, really, Pauline. I think I wouldn't like to kind of, and I think as Rod sort of ably pointed out there, in practice, the valuation is really looking at what the cost would be to the authority. So land will be an element of that, but there's also other factors that come in, such as labour cost, materials availability. So there's a lot of other variables. It's a slightly different way of looking at it than purely looking at sort of residential property values or something like an investment property.
Yeah, I was thinking of land as well, land prices.
As I said, I think that's we look at what the valuer does. I wouldn't like to sort of speculate on how where it would move. Obviously, I'm not a sort of RICS. That's not what our role is within this. So I wouldn't like to kind of speculate on that going forward, but I'm sure it will be something that the valuer will look at in the coming year.
Okay, right, go on, Dave.
Page 36 and page 9 in the hard pack, we then talk about firefighters and local government pension schemes. In particular, firefighters pension schemes are a very material estimate on the balance sheet, well over 200 million against a liability of a materiality of just under £500,000. So you can see why it's such a material figure to us and why we focus so much attention. In practice, the work that we do around this is similar to what we've talked about on the other side. We'll look at management's experts, which in this context is the actuary that management used to prepare this figure for them, and we'll again look at some of the inputs and methodology that go into forming that estimate. And the kind of things that we'll look at there are some of the assumptions around wage growth, for example, inflation, and some of the other areas, and we'll gain third-party information or third-party suggestions as to what a reasonable range for those assumptions might be. And we do summarise those assumptions and our view of them later on in the pack. The other key point that I think I'll draw out here is, as Richard touched on, we talk about this at the foot of page 9. One of the key things that we rely upon as auditors of fire authority is the ability of our colleagues, the auditors of the local pension scheme, to provide assurances to us. So what we'll do is write to them and ask them about some of the controls in place at the scheme itself, around recognising correct member data, for example, cash flows, and controls around valuing the assets that are held and managed by the pension scheme. I think, as Richard referred to earlier on, the pension scheme, much like the work that we've done on property valuations, the work on asset valuations within the pension schemes has been similarly quite heavily impacted. I'm sure you'll recall that there was also some stock market volatility around the time of the balance sheet date, 31st of March 20. So again, there's been some slight impacts there and increased scrutiny and some effect on the timescales for the pension fund. So we are just awaiting that final assurance from the auditors of the pension fund around those controls. As Richard said, that's something that he's also involved in. So we'll be looking at getting that information from them early October, and we'd anticipate once we've received and reviewed that, we would then be able to provide the opinion. moving on, you then get some kind of further. So on page 10.
Can I stop you there, just on the significant risk of is this something that audit committee should keep a constant lookout for it, or keep our eyes open really, that, because significant risk on this, when I was reading it this morning, that sort of really, lit up the red light. Is this something you're saying that this audit committee should
just
keep a particular eye on?
Well, when we talk about significant risk, what we're talking about as auditors is risk of material misstatement. Yeah. Again, I think I would put this in similar context to Rod's comments on property, which is in practice the way that defined benefit accounting works is that, again, the impact of this liability is also absorbed by a pension reserve. In the context of firefighters' pension, for example, there is a guarantee. There's a top-up grant which funds the additional cash required to meet those benefits on top of contributions. And similarly, the LGPS also enjoys an element, or perhaps an expectation, of central government backing. So there is a slight extent to which this is similar to the property estimate, in that it's a significant risk to us because it's such a large number and it's very complex. There's a possibility that it wouldn't take much of an error for it to be misstated and therefore require an adjustment. I think if it's something you're thinking in terms of something to look at as a real kind of operational risk to the authority, I think the implications of this are slightly different from that perspective. Clearly, there is a cash flow or an expenditure impact of the rate that the actuary sets. So this is what this is driving at, really. The level of the liability, the level of the deficit will impact the amount of contributions that the authority has to pay. So that does have an impact on the kind of operational aspects.
Dave, Rod wants to come in on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's just to add into there, really. Dave is, again, obviously absolutely right on that. In terms of operational risk, then it's culminated, but because of the change in the contribution rate from the employers, then we're currently relying on a £1 million grant from government each year to balance this. I think we'll probably touch on it later. So from the committee's point of view, it is something worth keeping your eye on. It's something, obviously, we report to you and we keep our eye on. And I think we should cover it later in the pension board minutes. That there's another risk which is coming forward from the McLeod Sargent case. So the pensions fund to fire services is a significant risk that needs to be monitored. So that's what I'd say. I think we'll be able to touch a little bit more fully on that later, can't we, Joe? Look for a nod. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Go on, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So moving on to page 10 onwards, or page 37 onwards, we set out, as I say, some bit more information about how we make those estimates. I think we've talked quite detail about those, so I won't go into too much detail. But just to flag up that on there is you see the assumptions that we look at. There's a bit more information on kind of the information that goes into looking at those estatements. Page 40 of the PDF pack and 13 of the hard copy is then where we talk about going concern. So just a sort of succinct summary, this is where we look at cash flow forecasting and budget forecasting on an ongoing basis. We're required as auditors under IFRS and under the auditing standards to make an assessment of whether or not we think that the authority will be a going concern within a period of a year following on from the date that we sign the audit opinion. So we're looking at kind of October next year. What we mean by going concern, fundamentally, an organisation that can keep meeting its obligations has got sufficient cash flows and sufficient current assets available to it to keep its operations in progress. I won't dwell too much on this because I think fundamentally, as we've said in our going concern assumption assessment, and as we've also said when we talk about value for money, our assessment is, as you've seen in previous years, and perhaps won't be surprised to hear that the authority has got a pretty robust financial setup as it stands. There's quite high levels of reserves, high levels of cash and current investments of current investment assets available to the authority to meet its obligations. Clearly, we are aware that there is also some major capital projects upcoming, so some of that reserves element is offset against that. And as Rod touched on as well, there are some issues going forward around the increase in pensions, which some of you will recall from the prior period was a very significant issue to the 18-19 accounts. However, we've looked at the authority's forecasting processes. There is an issue around cash flow forecast, which we'll touch on later on, but fundamentally, we think that the forecasting is very good. It's got a very robust way of doing that, and we believe that there is sufficient resources available to make the going concern assertion appropriate. We then go into a couple of slides where we just fill out some other areas that we're required to talk to you about under the code. I won't go into too much detail on these except to flag up on page 15 we talk about there's a section that is entitled other information. So this is in relation to the things like the annual governance statement, narrative report, which we talked about earlier on, and also there are pension fund financial statements which are included within the authority's accounts. These are also areas that our opinion covers. We do some work looking at consistency, internal consistency of those disclosures with the core financial statements, and we also will benchmark and effectively look at that narrative report and annual governance statement against the requirements and recommendations within the code of practice, and we'll include a comment on that in our opinion. And again, pleased to say that we've done that work and we've not got any issues to report to you in that respect. Slide 43 of the pack and 16 of the hard copy is where we talk about value for money. So as the kind of secondary part of our opinion that we'll express is the work that we do on our value for money conclusion. So we're effectively required to carry out a risk assessment against the three kind of key areas that you'll see set out in that diagram at the bottom left of the page, and we're required to look to see whether we think there's any significant risks in respect of those that the authority will not have appropriate arrangements in place to secure value for money. As we reported in our plan, we had carried out that risk assessment at the planning stage. We're pleased to say that we didn't have any significant risks identified at that point, and that hasn't changed on an ongoing basis. I think what I'd flag up is that although this is quite a brief section of the report, I'd just like to give the committee some assurance that we do quite a significant amount of work in this area. We carry out risk assessment on an ongoing basis. To give a flavour of some of the work that we've done, we look at upcoming risks. For example, clearly the PCC takeover is something that we would think about. The impact of COVID-19 and also looking forward to Brexit, and as well as just fundamentally looking at the financial sustainability and robustness of the authority, as we touched on when we were talking about going concern. So there is a lot of work underneath that, but again, we're pleased to say that ultimately our assessment is that the authority has got a good framework in place to secure value for money. So we don't have anything to report on in that respect. Slide 44 or page 17 is independence and ethics. So again, as your external auditors, it's very important that we report to you on our independence to make sure that we comply with the ethical standards. And again, we monitor this on an ongoing basis, and we're pleased to say that we remain independent. We've got no independence issues in relation to staff on the audit or in relation to fees for non-audit services, which we talk about a little bit later on in the report in one of the appendices. So just to close down, we then come to some of the appendices of the report, which again we're required to report to you under the ISAs. Appendix A is an action plan. So these are in relation to control points or issues that we've picked up through our work in the year. So there's two here. One is in relation to, as you'll see, debtor and creditor balances within the GL. I'll try not to go into the nitty gritty of this. Is fundamentally what we're getting at is there is a particular quirk of the accounting software that's used by the authority that can cause some issues around reconciling or matching off paid balances which can make it a challenge for us when we come to do the audit and when we come to pick a population. We've discussed with the authority, they've recognised the issue, and I think we've got a sort of plan going forward that some of those entries can be matched down, which should make it a bit easier for us to identify that clean population for sampling going forward. I think the positive aspect here is that we've picked this up early. This is a function of the new accounting software, and we've picked this up early on in the process. So hopefully Joanne's team should be able to resolve that on an ongoing basis. The second point there, we talk about cash flow forecasting. Just to give a bit of context, this really ties into the going concern work that we do. So again, under the standards, the accounting standards that we work to, we are required to obtain that cash flow forecast for not just a period of 12 months following the balance sheet date, but following the sign off. I think in practice, there is a wealth of information that's provided by the authority. So this is a bit of a compliance issue. We think that the forecasting that is done is good, but in order to be kind of fully compliant to meet best practice, that cash flow forecast should be extended to a period of 12 months after the likely sign-off date. And I think from discussions with the team, there was a slight impact of lockdown around the time that the working papers were being prepared. So that hadn't been extended at that point, but I think it will be resolved going forward.
So Dave, do you accept that this has been taken care of, the 12 months? Joanne, it says on there, unfortunately, this recommendation has believed to be completed. So you just missed it, did you? Or did you get the information late on that one, Dave?
If I can, Chair, we agreed with the recommendation by the auditors last year. And as we went into lockdown, we were under the impression that had been done. Unfortunately, we had overlooked it and it hadn't been done, but it is being implemented straight away.
Oh, I see. So it was done last year.
I'm happy with the recommendation, yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that, Joanne.
Thank you.
Okay, and then on to Appendix B, that kind of brings us quite nicely on to this is where we follow up on the recommendations that we would have made in last year's action plan. As you can see, 3 or 4 of those, I won't go into detail on those, but 3 or 4 of them were implemented. And then the bottom one is there on cash flow forecasting, which again, I don't want to kind of overstate that as an issue. I think we were very happy overall that there was sufficient forecasting being done, but it is just something that we need to look at to sort of fully comply with the standards. Appendix C, then, which is on the next slide, then just gives you a breakdown of the audit adjustments. So the top there it shows you the impact of the valuation change that we talked about earlier on. There's then some information on misclassification and disclosure changes. So within any set of accounts, there will always be the odd number of kind of small clerical or typo issues that you pick up, as part of the audit. That's one of the reasons why you get people into review. So I won't kind of dwell on the sort of minor changes. There's a couple there that I wanted to just draw attention to. So one of them is around COVID-19 disclosures. So we were able to agree some additional enhanced disclosures just to aid the understanding of users of the accounts around the impact of COVID-19 on estimation uncertainty, for example. I'd say that will be a common theme across any public sector set of accounts. This is slightly unusual scenario in year, and so I think a lot of audit teams and finance teams will have been working together to put those in and slightly amend those as kind of best practices emerged across the sector. And then we did pick up a couple of points on the senior officers' remuneration notes and related parties that needed to be amended. These are largely kind of clerical points, but as we identified in our plan, we deemed those to be quite material notes. So there were a couple of changes there. But as we say here in our recommendations section, we don't believe that was down to any issues with underlying data. This is really just down to issues with compiling the accounts. And as we say at the foot there, there's no unadjusted misstatements in the current period and none in the prior period. And then the final appendix here is D, where we just reiterate our fee. So the fee is the same as you would have seen at the planning stage. 26,496. And there are no non-audit fees associated with that. So we don't tend to do grant certifications or similar work for the Fire Authority. So there's no independence issues as a result of that. So that draws to a close the audit findings report. I'm very happy to take any questions that the committee might have on the report.
Okay, thanks, David. That's very comprehensive. Councillors, I picked up some of the points that I made in notes on some of these when I was reading it. The value for money. Councillors, your questions and queries now. I've been going along and picking them up as I was going along. Anybody got any questions? Are you all happy with it? Okay. In that case, we accept the report and proposer and the seconder, please. Pauline, Paul, seconded. We all accept it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dave. Quite a comprehensive one. And like I said, I made the notes, and as you were delivering your report, I was I picked them up as we go along. Thank you very much, Richard and Dave. And we accept the report. We move on to the next one. Wait a minute. Let me sort my papers out. Right. Item 8 is the annual review. Dave. Do we have a Dave amongst us somewhere?
Yes, I'm
Dave
here,
Myers, you're here, sir?
Yes, Chair. Ready to
That's
go?
it. Take it away, mate. Annual
Thank you, Chair.
review.
So members are asked to comment upon the draft annual review. As you'll be aware, we have a statutory responsibility to publish a review annually under the National Framework for Fire and Rescue Services. This annual review is a backward-looking review of our last 12 months, and it's a commitment to our communities in terms of what we have said we would deliver, and this is the assurances that we have managed to deliver against those commitments. As in the past couple of years, this annual review is presented in a sway document, and if members will permit me, I would like to share the document with you and run through the document and then ask for your comments. So bear with me while I share the document, Chair. Can we all see that, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'll go down through the review, and you'll have to forgive me that clearly I'll be moving at my own pace. I have to make the assumption members have had opportunity to look at it, so I will briefly try and touch on each area of the review as we go down through, and please then feel free to ask any questions or comments as we go. So the document is an electronic document. It's presented in this way because it makes it easier for the public to read and gives some clarity, and it has lots of images to try and show some of the activities that we've undertaken. As we say, it's our statement of assurance, and it describes our progress in making Shropshire safe over the past 12 months. There is an interim information section which is delivered from the Chair of the Fire Authority and the Chief Fire Officer, and it really explains what our 5-year service plan has been and how we have been performing against that 5-year plan. It makes some references to the fire alliance between ourselves and Hereford and Worcester, and the development of the Telford site, as well as other partnerships and alliances we have in place. We're looking at our safe and well visits and how we work our prevention activities, as well as our protection team. And of course, we make reference to the COVID pandemic, which has challenged the service across all aspects of response, prevention and protection. We talk about some of the ambitions, becoming more inclusive. We talk about the fire boot camp that we ran last year in terms of our positive action events and the successful recruitment of staff against our whole time recruitment campaign. We then make reference to the HMI CFRS inspection, where we received 3 good ratings across the 3 areas of inspection, and how we aspire to move from good to outstanding in those areas moving forward.
Dave, what's the chances of getting outstanding from good?
Chair, obviously that the dependence is against how the HMI assess us. We are confident that we should receive a higher grading in at least one of those areas, particularly the people area, where we feel that our culture is probably our strongest area of performance, and we feel very confident that we're able to achieve outstanding in that area. So, as I say, that's the introduction and the preface signed by the Chief and the Chair. The next item here is a video. I'm not going to play the video, but basically it's a tour around Shropshire for the viewer. It shows some of the areas of outstanding beauty, some of the risks in the county, and gives an idea of the type of environment that we're working in. We then move into the content of the review, and we look at a look back at the last 12 months, and we look at it on a month-by-month basis, focusing on specific events that happened within each of those months. So in April, we look at Water Safety and Drowning Prevention Week and the work that we did as a service to support that national campaign. In May, we look at the issue around menopause awareness training, which we were recognised as an outstanding employer, and where we were asked to present some of our experiences to the Houses of Parliament Select Committee. In June, we talk about the HMI CFRS inspection and the fact that we got goods in all 3 areas. And in July, we focused on the fire station open day at Wellington. In August, we then talk around arson at a local pub, and obviously there were some comments from senior managers around arson in the county generally. In September, we make reference to a multi-agency rescue scenario and training exercise, which happened at Ironbridge. In October, we look at the first round of flooding, which happened in Shropshire. And in November, we make reference to a specific individual called Charlie Humphreys, who came to the station at Telford, where the crews showed him around and helped him understand more about the fire and rescue service. In December, we look at the carol service that we held at St Chad's in Shrewsbury. In January, we talk about a particular rescue from Minsterley, where firefighter Paul Scott, rescued a dog called Boris, using some equipment that we have to specifically assist animals with oxygen therapy. In February, of course, you'll remember, members, that there was Storm Dennis, and we had another area of flooding which hit the county across the whole of the county. And then in March was reference to a bus fire in Little Dorley. So that's just a flavour for the communities around the type of incidents that we've been attending throughout the year. We then talk about the governance arrangements of the fire, and this makes reference to the changes in the authority in terms of the membership, where we reduced the members down from 17 to 15. And we reduced the numbers of committees from 3 to 2. It also has links there to our website to give further information around reports and meeting dates of the authority. We then have an overview of the service itself. So this starts with the Chief Officer explaining how the different directorates are comprised, and then a view of the stations, the locations of the stations, and links. We then talk about our vision and purpose. So at the moment, or certainly in 2019 to 20, our vision has been putting Shropshire's safety first. And we explain what that means and how we do it, and the core values that underpin the way that we do that. So these are National Fire Service core values, and there are 4 of these core values which are outlined here. We then make reference to our workplace charter, which was recognised through the HMIC as a best practice piece of work in terms of creating a behavioural charter. And then we look at some of the risks that we faced. So we know some of these risks are geographical, and certainly some of the areas around the county lead us to ensure that we have the appropriate planning in place to address those risks. And we talk about some of those, and some of them are around the communities and the demographics of the county as well. There's a small graph there that just shows some of the incidents that we've attended, broken down into the incident type. We then give a progress of the activities against the annual plan for 2019 and 20. And this gives a narrative against each of those activities and explains what we have done and how we progressed them. We then look at our aims and targets, and these are really the targets that we've made a commitment to achieve and that we hold our teams accountable for, such as the performance management targets, etc. So the first one is around to be there when you need us in emergency, the first fire engine arriving at least 4 firefighters within 15 minutes on 89% of occasions. The second is around reducing the number of fires in the community. The third is around the number of fire-related deaths. The fourth is around providing value for money. And then we look at how we've delivered against those targets. So the narrative explains how we've met those targets, and I won't go into the detail as members are aware of how we've performed against those targets. But then we also look at our community work and achievement as well as just those targets. So it's actually about what have we brought in terms of benefits to the community in terms of the way that we've delivered against those targets. So there's work around the safe and well visits. We also look at how we have delivered against a variety of different national campaigns. Talks briefly around working with partners in terms of road safety and driving behaviours, and then we look at financial performance. So this breaks down the budgets, looking at how our budget for 1920 was funded, explains to the public how we've divided that budget up and how we the expenditure and the way that we spent that revenue budget. We then look for our future plans, so what we intend to do 2020 and beyond. So we know that we've a 5-year service plan, which we've extended by 1 year to align with our alliance strategy in terms of working with Hereford and Worcester. And then we have a contact page to allow the public to get in touch with us and to feedback on anything that they've seen within this community plan or any other issues that they might have and want to raise. So there's a whistle-stop tour, Chair, around the annual plan. I'm happy to take any questions and acknowledge that really that was a whistle-stop tour, and obviously members will want to probably look at the document in depth more fully themselves.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Looks all good to me. I got no question or query. Anybody, councillors? Pauline?
Yes, Councillor Adams. Could I just ask on the future we just looked at, in my area, in the next 5 or 10 years, I will be getting not far short of 1,500 houses. To back that up, we're going to get new schools, may get a new medical practice. How, operationally, this is, how do you expand your operation and your source of information to take account of that sort of development?
Dave.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. I think this really falls straight into our IRMP planning cycle. Clearly, information such as new developments come through in terms of planning representations to our planning officers, and we will sort of have a heads up in terms of new developments. But our RMP will look more specifically at what the risks are in terms of the community risks, the increased numbers of members in the community, but also the infrastructure that might provide. So again, we have to look at things like water sources, make sure there are hydrants in place, and that will then feed into the RMP planning process to make sure that we've got the resources in place to address the likelihood of perhaps an increase in incidents that result from those increased communities.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So can I just ask, if you have a large increase in population and houses, like you're getting in Shrewsbury and Shropshire all over, is there any central fund that actually increases in proportion to the number of people you have to look after?
I wish, Councillor, that were the case. We have to work within our own budget envelope, and obviously it's for us to divert the resources we have appropriately to the risks that we face. If there were an increase in houses, obviously the council tax would increase, and we would receive a proportion of that, which would support our underlying budget.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Yeah, the more houses there, the more council tax comes up, and the government grants as well. Pauline, you're on next.
Yeah, thank you. It's an excellent report. I've really enjoyed that. Even though it's a whistle-stop tour, I'll go over it again. I just wondered if it was possible to have a printed copy put in all the libraries. If you thought that'd be a good idea, so that people, particularly children, when they're going in there, they could see what because everybody likes to see what the firemen do, but perhaps they wouldn't go onto the computer to look. But if it's, it's got lots of pictures and everything, and I just wondered if, you might think that might be a good idea to put it into libraries across the whole of Shropshire.
Chair, if I might, yeah, that's a particularly good idea, Councillor. I think we could absolutely look at what the implications of printing them out and getting a bound copy sent out to libraries or other public buildings. Yeah, we could certainly look at that as an option.
Yeah, I'm not for taking away, but just so that people could look at it at the library as a reference.
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just interested to know, really. Obviously, we've had the lockdown in March up until a couple of months ago. I'm just interested to whether the number of deliberate fires and also the number of accidental fires in the home, have they increased or decreased with people being at home more? I would expect them to increase. I don't know whether they have or not, or.
I could probably hand you over to the ACFO for the response to that in terms of the detail. My understanding is that on the whole, there's been a downward trend, but I think Simon would probably give you the better detail.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Dave. I'm actually going to cover accidental dwelling fires in the service targets, Councillor. Happy to address it now or leave it till that report.
I'll leave it up to yourself, whatever you decide.
Okay, just as a headline figure in terms of accidental dwelling fires, we're actually performing well against our target. We've got an actual figure of 71 incidents from the reporting period, which started on the 1st of April until the production of this report on the 1st of September, and that's against a target of 78. So we are performing well against that target, and as it stands, we're not seeing significant increases in numbers of accidental dwelling fires.
Yeah, I was just going to say, really, obviously, with more people spending more time at home and not at work, and those are working at home and not in the office, you would have expected accidental fires to have risen because there's more time to cause an accident.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor, in terms of people being at home. The one thing that it does provide us is with people being at home in the daytime, hopefully those individuals are alert and familiar with their surroundings. So any fires are dealt with swiftly, or prevented in the first place. So we're not seeing that significant increase as it stands at the moment, but we are monitoring it, and I'll provide you some further updates shortly if that's acceptable.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Simon. Okay. Anybody else? No, I can't see any hands up. Well, Paul, can you get your hand down, mate? You know, a little button there somewhere. Your hand is still up. Thank you. Right. Thanks, Dave, for all that. And see what you can do for Pauline. Hard copy, glossy copy, one in every library. It might be helpful for the kids to browse through. Okay, this is, hang on a minute.
Sorry, Chair.
It's going to be seconded and, oh yeah, proposed and seconded for the annual review. Paul and seconder. Thank you, John. All accept the report, everyone? Yes. Okay, thank you. We move on to item number 9 now. Corporate risk. Get Edwards. Do we have a Get Edwards amongst us?
I am here, Chair.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Chair.
Can't see you, but I know you're there somewhere.
Yes, I'm here. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Corporate risk register. So last reported to committee in July. No change on the register in terms of no new risks have come onto the register. Nothing's been taken off. In terms of direction of travel of the risks, they all remain the same as I previously reported to you, with the exception of the provision of data management information, which is now reducing as we've recruited additional resource into our business intelligence team. Other than that, the register remains the same, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillors, this report is the content of the report. Anybody question, queries? Peter, can you move your, you can only see your head, mate. I hope you don't mind me saying so. That's it. That's more like it. Now we can see you all. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I leave my photo like that because I'm told my face is perfect for radio. But what was I going to ask? Oh dear. Oh yes. On your risk register. Sorry. This morning I had to present the Shropshire Council annual audit report. So I've been being.
I think you got a problem with that somewhere. Peter, you're frozen. We can't hear you. Your picture's frozen. Oh dear. Sorry, Pete, we can't hear you, mate. Anybody else got any question or queries while Peter's sorting his technical problem out? Give him another minute. Lynn?
Yes, Chair.
Can you help Peter in any way? No.
I'm not sure that I can, actually.
No, there's nothing we can do. No.
Nope.
Sorry, Pete. We got to move on now.
He's turned it off, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he's
right.
gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. What we're going to do is, if there is nobody got any question or query, we got to move on. You popped in, Pete? No, somebody else. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the risk management summary, and then we can move on from this item. Thank you, Pauline, and I'll second it, or Karen will second it, and we all accept it. Okay. Thanks very much there, Mr. Edward. Get Edwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Peter. Right. Item number 10 is the one we were sort of just talking about it a minute ago. Pension, Dave Myers. Dave, you still there?
Yes, I am, Chair. Can you hear me? Okay.
I leave it. I'll turn my camera off.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay. Move on, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is the Pensions Board meeting. As members will be aware, this is a cross-service board which is there to review and advise on the pensions. We do not make decisions on the pensions, but it's to make sure that we are aware of the implications of the pensions and the scheme and support the scheme management. It'd be worth noting at section 4 that the senior pensions officer left Shropshire Council to follow another career option, and that was reflected in the risk register, in as much as we were concerned that the lack of or loss of experience would perhaps negatively impact the service that we receive, which has been excellent to date from Shropshire County Pensions Fund. So during the meeting we looked at the terms of reference, because at the moment we have a small team which consists of 2 employer members, 2 employee members, and the authority treasurer, and sometimes that can make it very difficult to maintain a quorum within the meetings agendas. So we looked at perhaps expanding the membership to try and increase the opportunities for attendance at meetings. I won't go through all of the minutes of the meeting, but I will talk to members about the risks, because I think there are some significant risks that have come to light, and they're pertinent to the committee. So the first one that we raised was around recruitment and retention of staff or knowledge, and this makes direct reference to the senior pensions officer leaving the scheme administrator.
Sorry if I can interrupt. You mentioned about the shortfall in the committee. What actions are you going to do?
So
are you going to be recruiting new people, or?
Yeah, so for the information council, there isn't a shortfall, but the numbers that were within the committee make it difficult sometimes to maintain a quorum. So the intention is to increase the membership by recruiting, as you suggest. However, the membership has to be balanced against employers and employees. So it's subsequent to the employees being able to recruit the appropriate number of members, and therefore then the employers balancing that against them. So at the moment, our union representatives have gone out to their staff to look for expressions of interest to join the pensions board, and we'll be reviewing that at the next board meeting in December.
Thank you for that information.
So if I move back down to the risks, clearly there's a risk around the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think that's probably a generic risk that's on most risk registers at the moment. But clearly that does add additional risk to the pensions board in terms of the administration, making sure that the administrators have the appropriate capacity and resilience to be able to deliver against our requirements. Then we talked about the age discrimination remedy, and this is the reference the Chief Officer made to the Sergeant McLeod issues. There is at the moment a consultation with HMT around the remedy for that age discrimination issue, and at the moment the remedy looks as though it could be formed 2 parts, whether members who have been moved from the 92 scheme, which was the old existing scheme, into the new 2015 scheme, would like to remain within that scheme, or move all of their benefits over to the 2015 scheme. To understand that, those members would have to have a calculation against both of the schemes, and clearly that puts a burden both on our own financial teams to provide the financial data, and on the pensions team to do the calculations. And that consultation is closing, I think, on the 11th of October. So we have yet to find out what the preferred methodology will be in that respect. There was also a risk put on around administration contracts. We've seen across the sector, and this is nationally, administrators withdrawing from the market, which is becoming more and more complex with the challenges around the scheme and the number of schemes. There are 6 different firefighter schemes as well as the LGA scheme, and it's becoming more and more difficult to manage and administrate those schemes. And as a result, we're seeing some of those smaller scheme administrators withdrawing from the market because it's not financially viable. The challenge that puts to us is that clearly then the restricted market will become a more specialised and potentially cost us more if we had to move administrators. At the moment, Shropshire County Pension Fund are giving us assurances that they have no intention of withdrawing from the market, and they are investing in training to replace the member of staff that's left and create greater resilience across their team. That is the substance of the meeting that we had for the Pensions Board. I'm happy to take any further questions, Chair, if there are any.
Okay. No questions for me. Anybody else, councillors? Okay, Dave, thanks very much for that.
Chair,
Liv?
I think there's a question from Councillor Adams.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Pete, go on, Pete.
Hello. I'm back. I'm sorry. I seem to be fated with being cut out of audit meetings. The last one I was at Shropshire Council, they cut me out just as I was introducing external auditors. But it's a question of risk assessment. At Shropshire Council, one of the major new risks that are being assessed is the problem with COVID. But I noticed that earlier, a couple of months ago, you put out a report saying that your absence figures had actually fallen during the this COVID period. Do you have an explanation for that? Because it just seems to go against the national trends.
Councillor, I think that's if I might, Chair, I think that's a question probably for the last item. But
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to give a response. What we've seen, Councillor, is that absence rates have fallen, mainly for a variety of reasons, and they're all anecdotal. We don't know that for definite, but what we've seen is restrictions in terms of staff relationships in the workplace. So more distancing, social distancing measures, safety measures, and we've limited staff movements around the organisation. So staff are working, if you like, in small bubbles. That in itself limits their exposure to illnesses and catching coughs and colds and such like. So we would expect a less sickness absence as a result of that. We've also seen staff probably, as well as children, not going to schools. Those members of staff who might have children are not being subjected to illnesses being brought into the household from outside of the household. So we think that is a contributory factor to that reason.
All right, thanks for that, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on from the pension board onto the next one. If no councillors got any questions, Lynn, do you want that one seconded and proposed? Oh yes, there is. Okay, can somebody propose and second the pension board minutes? Move it. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul or Karen. We all accept it. Okay, thank you. Let me get the next one.
Correct.
If I can, Lynn, the letter of representation and the financial statements are usually signed by the chair of the committee, but as they aren't ready to be signed off yet, the auditors have asked that that's delegated to the Chief Fire Officer and the Treasurer so that we're able to get signatures if the committee was agreeable.
So you want this committee to agree that Rod can sign when they're ready?
Yes, please, Chair. Rod and James is the Treasurer. if that's
Okay.
agreeable to the committee.
Councillors, I got no objection to that one, but does anybody have an issue with that? I agree with that one. Okay, they can sign it. Paul, you agree with that? I think he's on the mute now. I think we all agree.
He's frozen.
All right,
Yes,
that's fine.
yes. I was just supporting it.
Are you okay with that, Paul? Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
definitely.
you, Chair. Thank you, Lynn.
All right, we move on now. Okay, the next one is item 11, performance. This is Simon Hardiman. Simon, are you still there? There he is.
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Take it away, mate.
Thank you. So just want to take you through the progress against the service targets from April to September for this year. So purpose of this report is to provide a summary of the service performance, and the committee is asked to note the report. Moving through the report, at the time of setting the current targets, it was noted that they present challenges for the service. During the first quarter, so taking you back to the previous audit and performance meeting, we presented good progress against 5 of the 7 targets. When analysing the data for this report, which took place up to the 1st of September, we've made further clear progress against 6 of the 7 targets. So we've made improvement upon quarter 1, and this has been in relation to fires confined to room of origin, with a performance rising from 87.72% to 90.8% during the reporting period. So all in all, a really successful outcome in terms of that performance measure. The target that we're currently undertaking further work to achieve remains around our response standard, which continues to provide intelligence to inform our IRMP for 21 through to 25. Our current performance during the reporting period sits at 84.8%. And what I'd like to do, Chair, is take you through to the appendix for further detail against each standard. So starting with the response standard, where we talk about the first fire engine will arrive at an emergency incident with at least 4 firefighters within 15 minutes on 89% of occasions. I think it's key to look at the monthly performance section that I've set out within the appendix, which gives a breakdown month by month. So April 85%, May 85%, June 88%, July 86%, and August 80%. August has caused the service to look further in depth at the reasons why we've had that reduction in performance against the standard. And what we've identified is there's been a recent upgrade to our command and control system. So the way that calls come into our fire control facility and we mobilise appliances to incidents from there. That's caused some technical issues with status updates. So when a fire engine finally gets to the incident, it'll use the mobile data terminal to book in attendance, which gives us our time from time of call right the way to get into the incident. The technical issue has caused that status not to be transmitted back into the command and control system. So there's some work that's been undertaken during August to rectify that. I think it's fair to say that the number of incidents where we've attended an incident in over 15 minutes has been less, but the fault has thrown up this anomaly in the reporting data that our technical teams are working to rectify. So moving through onto page 2 of the report, section 2, around all accidental dwelling fires, and probably bringing us back to Councillor Milner's question earlier. Our performance remains strong in this area. With a target of 181 for the reporting period, we've actually got a figure of 165. If this performance was to remain the same until the end of the year, so through the further reporting periods, we'd achieve a figure of 396 against a target of 433, which would see a further 8.6% reduction against target, which again puts us in really good position where we are in terms of reporting for the year. Moving through onto page 3, sorry, that was accidental fires. Moving through onto the accidental dwelling fires, performance achieved for the reporting again is an improvement on last year with a reduction of 28 incidents over the reporting period, so a significant reduction. The actual figure of 71 against a target of 78 again puts us in a strong position for this time of the year, and if the performance were to remain the same until the end of the year, we'd achieve an actual figure of 170 against a target of 186, which again is good performance and a continual reduction in incidents. We have looked at the main causes for accidental dwelling fires because we look at each one of these in its isolation, so we can understand and then tailor our prevention activity to create further prevention messages and reduce the figures further. And the factors continue to be faulty electrics and appliances and leads, which is broadly in line with similar years reporting, and also misuse of equipment and appliances, and that predominantly relates to cooking appliances, so ovens, microwaves, that sort of stuff. So again, really strong position for where we are in the year with the accidental dwelling fires. Moving over the page onto page 4, item 2C, where we look at deliberate fires. And again, I think it's fair to say that performance against this target is excellent against where we were last year and where we are again this year. The actual performance of 155 is against a reporting target for the period of 217. So we've got a reduction of 28.6%, which I think is a fantastic place to be for where we are. And if the service were to remain the same standard for the remainder of the fiscal year, the actual performance would equate to 372 incidents against a target of 520. So again, fantastic performance in terms of deliberate fires. And again, that links back to our prevention activity and also our work with our fire crimes officer and our partnership working with local authorities and West Mercia Police. Just out of interest, the incidents to date, 42 have occurred in the Tweedale station area, 33 within Wellington, 24 within Shrewsbury and 19 within the Telford Central area. So again, we're looking for those hotspots across the county where we can continue to mobilise our resources to be most effective. Moving through onto page 5 of the report, where we look at fire-related deaths and serious injuries in the community. The service, we're well on track to ensure that we reduce injuries and serious injuries and deaths to less than 10. We've currently had 1 serious fire injury, I'm sad to say. However, that has not increased since the last reporting period. So the serious injury recorded there was in the first quarter of 2020-2021 reporting. Taking over the page onto page 6. This one, 3B, relates to injuries sustained to staff through firefighting, and we're looking there at no more than 19 injuries. We've reported 6 up until this period, and that's 1 less when comparing to last year's figures. Assuming the rate of injuries sustained by staff remains consistent throughout the year, we're looking at an actual figure of 14.4 injuries for the year against a yearly target of 19. When analysing the 6 recorded incidents, 4 occurred whilst attending operational incidents and 2 occurred in the operational training environment, none of which of the accidents recorded required reporting through the RIDDOR process. So we've managed those through our own accident investigation processes to identify any trends and areas we can improve moving forward. Page 7, we're then looking at fire and heat damage, or confined to room of origin, as it's referred to in our service targets report. As we agreed in March 2020 at this committee, we kept this indicator within the service targets to use it as an internal performance measure. And the reason being, it provides analysis relating to a variety of occurrences, such as how effective our firefighting tactics have been and our actions, and it also allows us to identify trends in incident types and methods of construction that may or may not contribute to fire spread that we'll then share through our channels back into national groups if we identify any trends through building construction. Probably a good example would be timber frame buildings or cladding, as we're aware is high on the agenda at the minute. The indicator was missed marginally in Q1 with an actual figure of 87.72 against the 89.5 target that we were looking to achieve. However, as we've progressed through the reporting period, the performance has improved and we've now got a current figure of 90.8. So again, a marginal gain, but it's put us back on track to achieve that target. Out of the 75 incidents relating to this indicator, 66 have been confined to the room of origin. However, due to that marginal gain, we will continue to monitor this closely and use it for continual performance within the service. And Chair, that brings me to the end of the appendix. More than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much for that. It seems to be on. All right, councillors, got any queries on the performance? No?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I think they make really good reads. You know, every fire we don't have is one less, and the potential to save lives. And I think everybody at the service needs to be commended. To be honest, they really are good figures. So thank you on behalf of myself, anyway.
Okay. John, did you want to say something?
Yes, if I may. I'm just wondering, is there an increase in the Wellington area? If so, can any particular reasons why? And also, if I mentioned at the start about thanking all the officers for the hard work at the Red Hill problems we had at the Red Hill problem. So if I can thank you for that.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. I will ensure that those thanks from the committee are passed on to the attending crews and officers. In terms of Wellington, we have Wellington continues to be, and I think it was reported at the end of last year's figures, we tend to look at our deliberate fires in the Wellington area. Looking at the figures there, we've got 33 for the reporting period within Wellington. Work continues with our fire crimes officer in Wellington and the other areas where we've identified those hotspots. Predominantly, that is around deliberate fires that our fire crimes officer will be involved. But in terms of types of incidents, we've got the most frequent causes are loose refuse, so it's waste including gardens, and small refuse such as your recycling containers and wheelie bins. So that's the scale that is coming out as our prolific incidents, if you want to call it that, within the deliberate fires, councillor.
There you go, John.
Is there any way us as councillors can we help in any way to, you know, I don't mean going out with a bucket of water and dousing the fires ourselves, but
yeah, absolutely, councillor. Assistance against deliberate fires is always more than welcome. So I think when surgeries are being held, etc., I think it's just raising awareness and identifying opportunities where we've got crews that will continually go out as part of their normal operational duties and identify where fly tip waste is put and report it through local authority applications. So if we could encourage that with members of the community to identify where that waste is, reporting it into the local council so that can be cleaned away. That's one fire less that we can prevent as well. So that's one avenue where councillors can really assist us in getting that message out. And I think it's in terms of education as well. So there's probably a piece we can do around prevention and using yourselves as part of that prevention message to reach our community. So absolutely, councillor, in terms of how we can engage and work together to overcome some of the deliberate fires.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Simon, you probably gathered that he's a councillor for Wellington. Well done, John.
Yeah.
Right.
And also parish councillor for where the Red Hill consists as well.
Oh, yeah, you're the Red Hill councillor for that side as well.
Parish.
Right. Oh, yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. So this is the performance. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for this report, please? Thank you, John. Thank you, Paul. We all accept it and we move on. Right. The next one is Adam Matthew, whole time on the performance monitoring unit. Have we got Adam Matthew anywhere? Adam Matthew.
I'm here, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're on now, Adam.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this report provides a summary of information for June to August of 2020 regarding the performance and management of availability across whole time and on-call shift systems within Shropshire Fire and Rescue, and the committee is asked to note the contents of the report. So there are a few key areas that I'd just like to highlight to the committee. Section 4 shows that whole-time appliances still remain at 100% availability during this reporting period. I'm also pleased to announce that we've now have 5 whole-time transferees who have joined Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service from other services around the country. And we're also, as of next week, we have 5 new recruits who will be going away to do their whole-time training as well, of which 2 of those are currently on-call firefighters with us as well. So that's pleasing to see some of our on-call colleagues also being successful in achieving whole-time careers with us. Section 5. So our on-call appliances are currently achieving 98.45% availability, and that's for the fiscal year that to date. And this is an increase of 2.25% for the same reporting period last year. And I've also put a monthly breakdown in there. You will see August, we have had a drop in availability by a couple of percent, and at the moment we're probably seeing that is due to the easing of some of the COVID restrictions, and probably some of our staff returning from furlough back to their primary employment and taking them away from their availability. So that's probably one of the likely reasons that we've seen that drop. Support to our on-call stations remains through the group support team, which you'll all be aware of, and predominantly that has been at Minsterley, Much Wenlock and Prees fire stations, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in with some of those stations further into the report. The group support team have provided a total of 1,073 hours support during the June to August reporting period, and you'll notice that is significantly down from the same period for 2019-20. And again, I think the pandemic will probably have had an impact on those figures, particularly in the lockdown period when some of our members of staff were confined to their house, if you like, which has aided their availability because they're within the 5 minutes turnout and not in their primary employment. You will note that 685 of those hours, so 63%, have been carried out at the 3 formerly mentioned stations of Prees, Minsterley and Much Wenlock. So that's 63% at those 3 stations. Section 6 has a station-by-station breakdown, which I'm sure you will all taken a look at, and you can see the average of 98.45 across the service in the year to date. Section 7, I'm pleased to report that we have now commenced the on-call sustainability review. So a watch manager has been appointed into that role on a 12-month secondment and took up the post on the 1st of September. So we're currently looking at the project initiation document and engaging with our on-call members of staff to scope out some of the areas that we will be concentrating our efforts on moving forward. And then I'm going to go to Appendix A, if I may, where I've just given some more detailed information around the 3 stations highlighted in the report. So we have got Prees. So some of the information there for Prees, although I have got, hopefully, touching wood, a bit of a success story. Prees are currently down to 5 personnel across the station, and we've lost another one recently from that station. However, I am pleased to say that we've got 1 completing the job related tests, so the physical tests this evening at Telford Central, hopefully with a view to moving through and going on to the next recruits course. We've got 1 attending the job related tests at next month's testing. So again, hopefully they will be on the next recruits course. And we've got 4 individuals who have expressed an interest, and currently the assistant group commander who's responsible for prees is shall we say liaising with those individuals, discussing applications. So hopefully, touch wood again, we've got 6 individuals there, so we could be looking at doubling the numbers of personnel at Prees Fire Station over the next 6 months, which will be a fantastic story. The local crews and their assistant group commander have been working really hard to try and boost numbers there and engage with the local community. I've also highlighted some of the Albrighton is another station that received significant support from the group support team, and we have had some long-term sickness there which has impacted, but again I'm pleased to say that we've got one on the current recruits course, and we've also got one that's going for tests this evening for the job related tests. And then lastly, Minsterley, again really pleasing to say we've got one on the current recruits course, and we have had a long-term sickness issue there as well. So and then last but not least, I did put it in the last report, but I thought it was worthy because it's something I'm the service is very proud of. In Appendix B, you will note from the HMI FRS inspections and the state of fire report, we are the highest performing fire and rescue service on mainland as regards availability, which obviously has been published within that state of fire report. So I just wanted to put it in once more because it's something we're very proud of, and I'm sure that the committee would like to see that as well. So that is a whistle-stop tour of the report, and I'm quite happy to take any questions if there are any, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, I think the Isles of Scilly is beating us. Maybe we can get on the top next time on it. Pauline, then John. Mute.
I had clicked it. I must have clicked it twice. Congratulations, absolutely fantastic to be the best of the mainland. I just are the personnel, are they aware of how much that we as a executive appreciate all the work that they're doing? And has it been in the, I don't always get the Shropshire Star, so has a report been to the Shropshire Star, and, we've been blowing our own trumpet or blowing your trumpet, because I just, think the work that everybody's doing to recruit, to make sure that our retained stations are, fully manned or personed, is brilliant. And I just really, from the top to everybody else, I just think, congratulations and thank you for keeping us all so safe.
You're going to wait for your turn, John.
I think it's really excellent report, and to be at the top, I think it's really excellent work that all the team have been doing, and it should be highlighted anywhere we can to inform people the thanks and appreciation again. And we're one of the best fire authorities in the area, so we're very, very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, again, the report's brilliant, and obviously being an Oswestry councillor, I see Oswestry's in one of the 6 with 100%, and as it's already been said, really, you hear a lot about other services, but you don't hear a lot about all the time and work and effort that's been put in by retained firefighters as well. You'd very rarely see them in the paper as a thank you, and they're again, as a service, is at the front line. But the question I was going to ask regarding Oswestry, are they got anybody on the waiting list to join as a retained firefighter there, or is there any jobs coming up there, so I can make it when I do my surgeries to actually say that there are jobs or vacancies available?
I'll take that if I can, Chair.
Yeah, go on, Adam.
Yes, councillor. So there are vacancies at Oswestry Fire Station. I'm not exactly sure. I certainly can provide you with the information as to how many vacancies there are at Oswestry. But yes, they're the vast majority of our on-call stations. We're constantly recruiting for. So I can get you the exact numbers that we are short at Oswestry. But we've really worked hard. We now have a national on-call fire site that we utilise for our recruitment. But there is a lot of hard work goes in, and there's no quick fixes for these stations. But it's a massive part of obviously of Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service with the number of on-call stations we've got. We do recognise the commitment that these individuals are giving, and we take every opportunity. And I think the fact that we're now carrying out this sustainability review also shows how much and how important they are to us.
Yeah. Are you sorry? Yes.
Go on.
Obviously, the firefighters have had their own worries as well regarding COVID-19 with their family members, and looking at the figures, 100% is brilliant. But are we taking into consideration that what the effect of COVID might have if their children come down with and they have to self-isolate? Are we taking that into consideration? What might happen if that happens?
Yeah, we are, and we've adapted certain things in the workplace, similar to like we have with whole time stations. We have looked. The one difficult thing with the on call is it's very difficult to set a bubble. We talk about bubbles, and that is very difficult because of the nature of the job they do. But what we have done is we've looked at, if you like, our normal business, our normal ways of working, and we have adapted those to hopefully, should we get a positive case, or should we have somebody have to self-isolate, we can restrict the impact it will have on that on-call station. Some of the stations, obviously, that have got lower numbers, such as Prees, that would be very difficult. But using Oswestry as your area councillor, we've got larger numbers there, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that should we have that situation and have a number of individuals that isolate, then we can still. We've got resilience, shall we say, within the service to still be able to mobilise a fire engine from Oswestry Fire Station.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Go on, Rod.
Well, Chair, you might want to let Simon talk first, because I'm sure I have a feeling he'll probably say what I'm going to say anyway, and it gives him a chance to get in there.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Rod. I think in terms of the pandemic that we find ourselves in at the minute, Council, I think whilst it provides us with significant challenges that Adam's outlined there, and in terms of assurance for the authority, we have got our resilience measures in place to ensure that we maintain service delivery. But COVID also presents us with an opportunity in terms of on-call recruitment, with people now working in a different manner, working from home, those that may have been unfortunate and lost their jobs or be in a different employment scenario to where they were before COVID. So again, as a service, we're exploring what this means to us in terms of people that weren't available pre-COVID, now being at home, working in a different environment, gives us another group of individuals that we can target in terms of recruitment. So thank you, Rod. Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
Chair.
Well, all I wanted to say is we are the top performing on the mainland, and somebody wants to take us over. Say no more.
I did have another couple of comments, Chair, if that's okay.
Go on then, Rod.
My point, it was firstly that the offer of members to help us out with recruitment. Actually, our most powerful recruitment tool is word of mouth. So if you whoever you're talking to in your areas, if you just talk about retaining recruitment for us, that's enough. Just talk to whoever you think has even a glimmer in their eye they might be good enough to be a retained firefighter. Point them in our direction, and we'll bring them on. So we're recruiting everywhere all the time, so it never stops. So that's the first one about that. The second one about you're right, we don't sell the story well enough. It's very difficult to sell a success story. So you need those moments. I think the HMI report was, and that's where we got this figure of best on mainland UK. That was a good moment to sell the story. The fire authority reports we use as opportunities to sell our stories. So while we're reporting to you, we're also making sure that there's a really open and honest description of the fire service there that gets in the papers, and that does very well. Trade mags, we've got a few opportunities at the moment to talk about it. But the big one that we're linking that to will be our sustainability review. So the sustainability review coming on board, and the way we're going to do it, as ever, will be engaged. As I've said to the team, the answers aren't in on the top floor of headquarters. The answers are on the fire stations. So we'll be going and talking to the retained firefighters and finding out what they think is a good way of working. And I think there are two stories there. One, that we'll be coming up with a new excellent way of working, and two, we'll be doing it in a very modern way, doing it with the engagement of the workforce. So we'll use all those to sell the story. But you know, media, it likes it. You've got to find a hook, to get you in, and that's what we look for.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Right. Thanks very much for that, Adam. Thanks very much for your contribution. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for this? Thank you, Pauline. Everybody.
Sorry, I've been trying to get my hand up, but it's not coming in. Could I just possibly ask Rod a question?
Sorry, mate.
So it's just a quick one. On that thing where you're the best in the country.
Yeah.
Could you possibly just drop a 1 or 2 paragraph email to all your councillors, and I can tell you I'll make sure it goes in my next in touch, which will get to 3,500 people, and I'm sure the others will do the same, because we're looking for good news stories all the time.
We can do that easily, Councillor. It's one of the paragraphs in the IRMP. So Dave's on the line somewhere. Dave will just lift that out, the IRMP, the one we've been consulting on, and so the more we can say that, the better. Thank you.
That will give you coverage in well, with a bit of luck, of over 100,000 people.
We can probably write it as a little story about the IRMP, what the IRMP is, and then explain that, so what type of service we are. So we can do that.
Thank you.
Right, it's been proposed and seconded and accepted. We're going to move on now, everyone. Right. Item 12, I'm going to read this out now. Exclusion of the public, press and public for decision. Do members agree that under section 100A for Local Government Act 1972, having been satisfied in all the circumstances of the case that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweigh the public interest in disclosing this information, that it is formally resolved that the press and the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that involves a likely disclosure of exempt information, as defined in paragraph 4 of Part 1, Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Proposer and the seconder, please, councillors.
I'll propose that, Chair.
Seconder, yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for that. And
Chair,
we have a meeting. We do have an item.
Chair, sorry, can we just need to confirm we've stopped streaming on YouTube. I'm just waiting for our comms officer to tell us. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.